The hand closed around Elena's arm so hard that her grandmother's ring bit into her skin. "Security, now!" Vivian Ashworth's voice cut the ballroom in half. "Throw this woman out of my house!" 40 guests turned at once. 40 conversations died mid-sentence. Champagne glasses hovered in the air. And in the middle of it all stood Elena Marsh. Gray apron, rubber gloves, a bucket of soapy water at her feet, doing the one thing that made the whole room freeze. She laughed. Not a loud laugh. A quiet, exhausted, knowing laugh. The laugh of a woman who has stopped being surprised by cruelty. If stories like this touch your heart, the kind where the world gets it wrong at first and the truth has to fight its way back, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and tell me in the comments before we begin, because this story will stay with you until the very end. "Did you hear me?" Vivian shrieked, her emerald earrings swinging. "This woman stole my mother's earrings. Search her. I want security to drag her out the front door, by the hair if they have to." A woman near the fireplace whispered to her husband, "That's the cleaning lady. She's been here at 5 in the morning for weeks. I've seen her through the window, down on her knees." Elena didn't flinch. She set the bucket down slowly, wiped her hands on her apron, and looked straight through Vivian. "You'll want to take your hand off me before my lawyer arrives," she said. Vivian laughed, high and brittle. "And you should know," Elena added, almost kindly. "The third step from the top squeaks, in case you want to impress anyone." A man snorted wine out of his nose. Vivian's face went scarlet, then white. She spun toward the security guard by the door. A tall, broad-shouldered man frozen mid-step, jaw tight, hands clenched. "Marcus, are you deaf? Get this woman out of my house." Marcus didn't move. 1 heartbeat. 2. Everyone noticed. Vivian stepped toward him, close enough that her voice dropped low, but not low enough. "Is something wrong, Marcus? Or do you need to be reminded whose side you're on?" The guard looked at Elena. Their eyes met. And Elena, this strange woman in the apron who had just been called a thief, gave him a tiny nod, almost invisible, like she was releasing him from something. "Do your job, Marcus," she said gently. "I won't make it hard for you." His hand closed on her arm, gentler than it should have been. He walked her across the marble while the guests watched, some scandalized, some amused, none intervening. She caught the portrait over the staircase as she passed. Her grandmother in a blue dress and pearls, watching everything the way she had watched everything in life, with a patient, knowing sorrow. At the door, Elena paused. "Vivian, my grandmother had a saying. The person who owns a house should know its floors. Every plank, every creak, every scar. Do you know this house, Vivian?" "Get her out," Vivian said flatly. The door closed. The party resumed. Elena stood on the marble steps in the cold evening air, rain on her face, and walked to the iron gate at the edge of the property the way she had walked it 1,000 mornings. Then she stopped. Her breath caught. The roses were gone. The entire east garden, ripped out by the roots, soil churned to mud, the old stone path buried under torn branches. 3 weeks ago they had been in full bloom. 41 years of Ruth Marsh roses, planted by her grandmother's own hands on the morning of her wedding day in 1964. Watered through droughts, through winters, through the year her mother died and the year her father followed. "Our renovation," Conrad had announced at the staff meeting. "The garden is dated. We're putting in a pool." Elena pressed her forehead against the cold iron of the gate and finally made a sound. A small, broken thing that was half sob and half prayer. "Grandma," she whispered into the rain. "I'm sorry. I let them make me small." 3 years ago, in the bedroom upstairs that Vivian now slept in, Ruth Marsh had lain in a narrow bed with an oxygen tube in her nose, her hand thin as paper around Elena's. "The house isn't walls, love," she had said, her voice a thread. "It's what you do for the people you love inside them. My mother scrubbed floors in this town for 30 years so I could buy this land. And you are the reason I fought for everything. Promise me you won't let anyone make you small." "I promise, Grandma." Ruth had squeezed her hand, once, hard, and then let go. Elena had kept that promise the only way she knew how. She didn't leave. She didn't sell. She came back every morning at 5, before the sun and before the Ashworths, in the uniform nobody recognized her in, to clean a house that legally belonged to her, because it was the only way she was allowed to touch anything in it anymore. Her parents had died on this road when she was 9. Ruth raised her. And Ruth's house had been the only mother she had left. Now the roses were gone. And there, in the mud, was the one thing she couldn't bear to lose. The old iron trellis, bent and broken, with a single white rosebud clinging to it, bruised but alive. Elena reached through the bars and touched it, and for the first time in 3 years, she cried. She cried until the rain stopped, and the sky went gray with dawn. And when she stood up, her face was dry and her eyes were hard. And she was no longer Elena the cleaning lady. She was Elena Marsh, heir to the Ruth Marsh estate. 2 hours later, in a dim booth at a diner 3 blocks away, Mr. Whitfield, Ruth's attorney for 32 years, a stooped man with kind, tired eyes, slid a folder across the sticky table. They recorded the deed today, Elena, presented as a sale from the estate. With the original will lost and my power of attorney valid, they'll have legal possession within 72 hours. How, Whitfield? You have the original deed. You have the will. I do have the deed, he said quietly. But Conrad forged my signature on a power of attorney 6 months ago, and he was your grandmother's executor. He told the court the will never existed. Filed it as an intestate estate, Elena, with no heirs located. He stopped, and his voice cracked. My wife, Geneva, the cancer. I've been gone a year, and I was too proud to ask anyone else to cover my files. I should have been here. I failed her. He meant Ruth. Elena looked at the folder. She didn't open it. My grandmother once told me, she said, that grief is just love with nowhere to go. So I put all of it into that house, and when she died, I put it into the morning shift. Hiding in an apron and calling it humility? That's not humility. That's fear wearing a modest coat. We go back today, Whitfield. I'm done hiding. Elena, they'll call the police. You have no standing in there tonight. Don't I? She slid the ring off her finger and laid it on the table. This ring is in my grandmother's will. You know what it is. I know what it is, he said slowly. Everyone in this town knows what it is. Then tonight, everyone in this town is going to remember. Across town, in the master bedroom that had once been Ruth Marsh's, Vivian Ashworth stood at the vanity mirror, a string of Ruth's pearls around her neck, holding the earrings up to the light. The earrings she had accused the cleaning lady of stealing. The earrings she had taken from the jewelry box herself 3 weeks ago. Conrad paced behind her, sweating in his silk robe. We should slow down. The party tonight. Every notary in the county is coming. What if somebody asks questions? Let them ask, Vivian said. By tomorrow, this is legally ours. You made it for 30 years, Conrad. Ruth made you manager and treated you like a butler. This is what you're owed. Vivian, the cleaning woman, today, she laughed at you. She's a maid who doesn't know her place. The party before the gala, Clarice, a society friend Vivian had known for 20 years, found her in the study and set down her wine glass with the expression of a woman who had just solved a puzzle she wished she hadn't. That cleaning lady, Vivian. When she walked past the portrait in the hall, I really looked at her. That ring on her hand, the plain gold band with the black stone. Ruth Marsh wore that ring to the opera for 30 years. I once watched Ruth hand it to a little girl years ago. A little girl with braids at her grandmother's knee. Vivian went still. Don't be ridiculous, she said. Cleaning ladies don't wear signet rings. Maybe that's the point, Clarice said, and she left the room. The gala began at 8. 40 guests, the same 40 because the Ashworths collected an audience the way other people collected art. Champagne, laughter. Conrad toasting the estate's bright future under new stewardship, while guests murmured over the torn-up garden and the speed of it all. Vivian was mid-toast, pearls glowing under the chandelier Ruth Marsh had bought in Paris in 1987 when the front door opened. Everyone turned. Elena Marsh walked in wearing a simple black dress, no apron, no bucket, no rubber gloves, just the dress and the ring, and a calm that made the room feel cold. Behind her, holding the door, stood Marcus, still in his security uniform, his face unreadable. Evening, everyone, Elena said. Please, don't let me interrupt the celebration. I've only come for a final walkthrough. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Conrad laughed, a strangled, too loud laugh. Security, he called out. Marcus, what are you doing? This woman is not welcome here. Remove her. Marcus stepped forward and stood between Conrad and Elena. Mr. Ashworth, he said, his voice steady. I can escort you to the door if you'd like, but I won't be touching this woman again. Are you insane? You're fired. I can't be fired, Marcus said. I don't work for you. He turned to the guests, and his eyes found Elena. 2 weeks ago, a woman interviewed me for this job in person. She asked me one question. Would I protect this house with my life? I said yes. Ma'am, he said, and his voice dipped. I didn't know it was you until today. And I'm sorry it took me that long to stand up straight. A woman in the crowd gasped. Clarice set down her wine glass. Vivian stepped forward, her pearls rattling. This is absurd. This is my house. I have a deed. I have papers. You have a forgery, Vivian, said a new voice. Mr. Whitfield walked in from the terrace door with a leather case under his arm, and the room parted for him like water. He set the case on the marble table and laid out 4 documents side by side. The original deed to this property, signed by Ruth Marsh in 2001, leaving the estate to her granddaughter, Elena Marsh, in trust, outright, with no executor's discretion. The original will, dated 1 month before Ruth Marsh's death. A forensic examination report, filed this afternoon, matching Conrad Ashworth's handwriting to the forged power of attorney. And a criminal complaint, also filed this afternoon, for fraud, forgery, and theft of property. The room was so quiet you could hear the chandelier crystals trembling. Conrad's face went gray. That's not. I built this fortune. 30 years. His voice cracked upward. Ruth left the company to me to run. She trusted me. And she left the house to a ghost who never showed up, who hid in an apron like she was ashamed of her own name. You can't give this to her. She didn't earn it. Elena walked slowly across the marble, past the gaping guests, past Conrad, past the portrait of her grandmother, who seemed, in that moment, to be smiling. You're right about one thing, Conrad, she said. I hid, and hiding cost me my grandmother's garden. Her voice didn't waver. But it taught me something. The difference between people who keep a house and people who use one. You used it. Every day for 6 months. You threw parties where people didn't belong. You ripped out roses older than your marriage, and you wore jewelry that wasn't yours in a bedroom that was never yours. She turned to face the room. This house was built by a woman who scrubbed floors for 30 years before she could afford a single plank of it. My grandmother. And she built it for me. Not for 40 people who stood silent while a woman was dragged out of her own home in the rain. Vivian's hand went to the pearls at her throat. The earrings. The ones she was wearing. The ones she had accused the cleaning lady of stealing. The earrings, Vivian, Elena said softly. You remember those. You were wearing them when you called me a thief. Vivian's face crumbled. Not into shame, but into something worse. Fear. Because in that moment, she finally understood. She looked down at Elena's hand, at the plain gold band with the black stone, and Clarice's words came back to her like a verdict. Maybe that's the point. Take them, Vivian whispered, fumbling at her ears. Take them, take everything, just tell me you won't press charges, please. Elena looked at her for a long moment. Then she turned to Whitfield. Mr. Whitfield, the theft charges. I'm withdrawing them. Vivian exhaled. Thank you, On one condition, Elena said. Before they leave tonight, Conrad writes a letter, in his own hand, signed, admitting exactly what they did, what they forged, what they stole, what they believed they were owed. You'll keep the original, Whitfield. I'll keep a copy in the deed box next to my grandmother's will, so that every morning I ever doubt who I am, I can read about a man who thought he deserved something he never earned. Conrad stared at her. And if I refuse? Then the police car that's been waiting at the end of the driveway for the last 20 minutes will have somewhere to go. Elena smiled. Not a cruel smile, just a tired one. Your choice, Conrad. You've been making them your whole life. Conrad wrote the letter at the marble table while 40 guests watched in silence. His hand shook so badly the ink bled. Vivian stood beside him, holding the back of a chair, wearing Ruth's pearls like they had turned to lead. When it was done, Marcus escorted them out. Conrad didn't say a word. Vivian paused at the door for one last look at the chandelier, and for a single second, her face changed. It was the expression of a woman who had been handed the keys to a kingdom and had never once asked who built it. Marcus held the door. Good night, Mrs. Ashworth. Just Vivian, she said faintly. And then she was gone. The guests didn't know where to look. Some crept out quietly. Some tried to apologize. Elena didn't answer them. She stood in the middle of the ballroom in her black dress and looked up at her grandmother's portrait, and the portrait looked back. "Ran the floors myself this morning, Grandma," she murmured. "The third step still squeaks." 3 weeks later, on a clear Sunday morning, Elena Marsh knelt in the east garden in jeans and an old sweater, pressing a new rose bush into the soil. Marcus, off duty but there anyway, dug the holes. Whitfield sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching like a man watching something he'd waited a long time to see. "They won't bloom for a couple of years, you know," Marcus said. "I know. 41 years of roses, gone. You really going to start over?" Elena patted the soil around the stem. "My grandmother planted hers the morning of her wedding day. She was 22, she had $11, and she borrowed a shovel." She smiled. "I've got $11 and a better shovel. We'll manage." Marcus held out his hand for the next bush. "Good thing neither of us is going anywhere." Whitfield raised his coffee from the porch. "To starting over." "To starting over," Elena said, and the ring with the black stone caught the morning light. And for the first time in 3 years, the house felt like it was breathing again. They say possession is 9/10 of the law, but the truth is simpler than that. You can own a thing for a day, a year, a lifetime, and still never truly have it. This house? It was never theirs. Because my grandmother's floors know my footsteps, and no deed, no forged signature, no fool with a fountain pen could ever change that. The people who steal walls always forget one thing. Walls remember who loved them first. Have you ever known someone whose worth the world refused to see? Someone who was overlooked, talked over, dragged out of rooms they belonged in? Tell me their story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe and hit the bell, because the next one will break your heart all over again. I'll see you there.